The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
It is 10 minutes after 8. We welcome you to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Exactly 10 years ago this month, on the 11th of October 2002, the erstwhile Department of Minerals and Energy, DME, which is of course now DMR, together with the mining industry stakeholders, that includes the Chamber of Mines, the South African Mining Development Association, and the National Union of Mine Workers, signed the Mining Charter. The relevance of this is, of course, the commission is getting underway in Marikana today, among other things, looking at broadly the Lonmin and what it has done around the environment, and also just generally looking at the implementation of the mining charter within this sector. That's what we would like to look at here on the Forum at 8 this morning. The how far have we gone in achieving the objectives of the mining charter? How has the industry performed in relation to the commitments that they made 10 years ago? Of course, over the years, there's been amendments. The charter has seen quite a lot of changes here and there, but the basic charter has been in place now for about 10 years. Right then, to discuss this all-important matter with me, let me start here in the studio. I'm joined by Mr. Bheki Sibiya. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Mines. A very good morning to you, Mr. Sibiya.
Good morning, Perpetua and the listeners.
Thank you very much for your time. And also here with me in the studio, Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi. He is the General Secretary of COSATU. A very good morning to you, Mr. Vavi.
Perpet, and good morning to all of your listeners.
Thanks indeed. Let's go to Marikana now. In our studio there, we are joined by Dr. Thibedi Ramonja. He is the Director General for the Department of Mineral Resources. A very good morning to you, Dr. Ramonja.
Good morning, Xolani, and good morning to our listeners.
Thank you very much. Well, perhaps we should start there with you, Dr. Ramonja, because when the charter was signed 10 years ago, there was an agreement that it will be reviewed after 5 years. Where we are now, have we been able to achieve at least halfway or whatever? Have we been able to make any impact as stated in this charter?
Okay, Xolani, I think what is important here, when we look at the charter, we need to look at it in the context of the history of South Africa, and especially the modern mining in South Africa, which has been taking place for the last 100 years. This industry created a legacy which marginalized black people, which created an environment whereby the mining industry dependent on the migrant labor system and cheap labor system, and also an industry which beneficiated insufficiently when it comes to minerals. So when the democratic government came in 1994, it had to find ways of eradicating this legacy which has been there for over 100 years. Hence, the introduction of the MPRDA and the charter. Okay, it was not going to be an easy process, but we had to put it in place in a legal way. And what we have noticed that, when you look at the situation of the charter and say, where are we? It will vary from company to company. It will vary in terms of the elements of the charter. You must remember we have got 9 elements of the charter. Okay, we have got the ownership part. Okay, we have got the procurement part, the beneficiation, the employment equity, human resource development, mine community development, housing and living condition, sustainable development and growth of the industry, and reporting, which is the last element.
Sure.
So when you look at it as, okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to go back to the elements, all 9 of them, perhaps just broadly look at them. But, and I was looking at an assessment that was made in 2009. The government's assessment says, in the main, the mining charter is intended to avert the status quo where HDAs, which are historically disadvantaged South Africans, are generally considered as a repository for cheap labor. On the other hand, management and company ownership was a reserved privilege benchmarked along racial lines in South Africa, and to be precise, in favor of the minority white South Africans. Therefore, the mining charter is derived from the same values of the supreme law of this country, which is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as it is more vociferous on the subject of equality. In inter alia section 9 on the equality and discrimination that talks to redressing historical and social inequalities. Now, 2 issues that I would like to raise out of that statement. Historical and social inequalities and HDAs as a repository for cheap labor. Have we dealt with these two issues?
Okay. When it comes to the whole issue of cheap labor in the mining industry, we are still in the process of addressing it. I think there's still more which we can do there. And, how to address something like this, you need to ensure that you introduce skills in the mining industry. We need to revolutionize the situation whereby each and every mining company trains its employees in a way that people can be skilled employees, and also giving them portable skills. We are still far, but you must remember that we have got a big milestone which we have got to reach, that is 2014. Okay, and we're saying to all mining companies, they have to ensure that they reach those targets which we have put in terms of 2014. And if they don't reach those targets, we will definitely act in terms of perhaps even considering taking their licenses away from them. That is a very important thing. We are not going to actually create a situation whereby people undermine the law. When it comes to ownership, we are saying, let's look at the situation whereby there is broad-based empowerment. Okay, we can't have a situation whereby one person is empowered. That one we have moved away from it. Okay, we need to ensure that employees also see value in the mining industry, and also see that they can own they can own these mines. They can be part of the ownership. In this regard, ESOPs are very, very important. The communities must also, in one way or another, be brought on board when it comes to ownership. So we have to ensure that that happens. If you look at the other issue, which is of a challenge to us, is that in terms of ownership, okay, we find that there's a lot of fronting which is taking place there. Okay, and fronting, in some cases, you even find that women are fronting on behalf of men. I think the minister has, in some instances, referred to this, and those are some of the challenges which we are going to address. And also, what we are looking at is the sustainability of some of these transactions. Okay, some of the transactions are not sustainable, but we know that there are some transactions which are sustainable, especially when you look at the greenfield environment. So we are going to look at those issues,
Sure.
ensure that those transactions are sustainable.
All right, I'm going to come back here into the studio in a minute, but let me just ask you this one question, Dr. Ramoncha, before I come back here. Your minister, in an interview with the Financial Times, implied that things are pretty bad in terms of compliance with the mining charter. And let me read a quote here. She said, "We have already noticed that we need to be tough when we decided to review the Mining Act, but with Marikana, it's like justifying the reason to be tougher. We are going to regulate it," talking about the mining charter now. "We were avoiding that because we thought we were dealing with adults, mature people who understand. We will make it be enforced, and if not, serious penalties must happen." The implication here is that the mining industry is not complying with the mining charter, but you seem to imply that there is some progress in certain areas and perhaps not so much in certain areas, but the minister seems to be saying that people are not adults here.
Look here, if you look at the whole situation, okay, and I think the minister was referring to that, when you analyze the whole issue of ownership, that was in 2010, okay, the study which was done then, it was at 8.9% ownership in terms of historical disadvantage. That is not acceptable. But then when you look at procurement, also there are issues which have got to be addressed there. If you look at procurement, most of the time you find that historically disadvantaged people, especially black people, are marginalized. They are just given procurement areas where they must actually provide toilet papers. They must clean the hostels there. But what is critical and what must be done here is that procurement must ensure that black people are empowered in all spheres, especially when it comes to issues of capital goods.
Okay.
That is not happening. And I think the minister was referring to such places.
All right.
It is definitely not happening.
All right, Mr. Vavi, you were part as the unions of the mining charter 10 years ago. What is your assessment?
Well, our assessment will be will be in line with the 5-year assessment that was conducted by the DMR, and as well as the statements that were made by the minister. which indicate that she's pretty frustrated about the slow progress that have been registered. It's now almost to 2014. The figures that we're going to talk about will tell us that we stand no chance of turning the situation around in the remaining 2 years or so to meet these targets that have been set and signed on by the mining industry on their own. So the progress is very slow. In fact, the Marikana Commission of Inquiry today is a statement against lack of progress. It's a frustration on the part of workers that there's not sufficient movement in relation to the slavery wages. That is a point of historical origins in terms of the mining, the cheap labor system that they had committed to eradicate. It's a statement against the declining standards of living. People still staying in the hostels and then getting some 1,800 rands for a living out allowance. That then makes them to flock around the informal settlement and build shacks where there is no running water, there's no electricity, there's no amenities. It's a statement against dehumanization of men. You put up men in hostels and you're getting people to live under those horrendous conditions. What then do you expect in terms of breeding a culture of intolerance, of bullying and all of that?
All right. Housing and living conditions, that's one of the 9 elements of the charter here. And you're talking a lot about hostels and the living out allowance. But the 1,800 that you're talking about, isn't that what people have chosen to take? Isn't it a choice?
It's a nice sweetener that seemed in the eyes of the mining company as a way out of a commitment they have made to build decent houses to mine workers, particularly to black workers who resided in the hostel. So you give them 1,800 rands and a living out allowance, and they can only live in the shack with the 1,800. So indeed, they excited workers like the 1,800, but they do not calculate the fact that in the informal settlement, as I've said, there is no electricity, there is no water, there is no clinic, there is no infrastructure, there is no basic amenities, there is no playing grounds for kids. The standards of living then just goes down, and the 1,800 is a nice sweetener to send an extra 1,000 rands home, but the reality is that your living standards are plummeting.
So in a sense, you're saying that it's a cop-out on the part of the mining industry?
It is, absolutely. It is, absolutely. And it's not even coming anywhere close to a commitment to build decent houses for mine workers.
Let's bring in the Chamber of Mines then, Mr. Spear. Broadly, firstly, I would like you to respond to the statement by the Minister who says that she thought she was dealing with adults here in the implementation of the Charter and therefore considering legislating the mining Charter as opposed to it being a voluntary document.
Mpepetwa, may we deal with the issue, firstly, of transformation. In 2002 to 2004, when the legislation was finalized, something very important happened, which for some reasons the stakeholders refused to acknowledge. Before then, the minerals were owned by the mining companies. The mining companies, out of their own volition, decided, you know what, out of this engagement, we are going to allow that the state be a custodian of the resources. And so the mineral resources, as we speak today, are owned by the state, or owned by South Africans and entrusted by the state. And therefore, companies operate under license. And if they operate under license and they violate their license conditions, the minister is at liberty to cancel that license. And I stand here today, both as a citizen of South Africa and a CEO of the Chamber of Mines. I want to say any company which breaks the laws of this country, the minister is entitled to cancel that license.
And that's a very important point you've just made there, Mr. Spear. Mr. Vavi, that's an important point that you should also, as unions, acknowledge.
We in COSATU Congress, we were talking about a mindset change, a Lula moment, a second phase of transition for a real and total emancipation in economic terms of black people and the working class in particular. And that mindset change will require that when the minister looks at these pathetic figures that are emerging and which indicate a lack of transformation in the mining industry, she should, in line with the MPRDA, act decisively to say, but we're only giving you license and the conditions are that you're going to be transforming, and now that you are failing to transform in a number of critical areas, we should be knocking at companies' doors already. It's 2 years now towards 2014. There is no chance some of them are going to turn the situation around.
Spear, but I really would like us to discuss a little bit of this point here, especially with Dr. Ramoncha then. If no company has had its license revoked, I would like then to say to you that it means you are happy with the progress in the implementation of the charter. Dr. Ramoncha?
Not at all. Not at all. This does not mean that we're happy. We give people an opportunity to rectify the situation. That is why I was saying our main milestone is 2014. Come 2014, those mines which have not complied with the charter, they will have their license revoked. And the minister has said it several times. It's going to happen.
All right, Mr. Spear is gonna make his comment in a minute, but let me take a commercial break and we'll come back to you, Mr. Spear.
The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
Right, Mr. Spear. The first point you were making about transformation, yes.
Through yourself, I would like to say to Dr. Ramoncha and to Mr. Vavi, may we just have an agreement that when the companies submit their reports, as they did in March this year, we have one institution which we are all happy with, which is credible, which is professional, which is objective, which is going to assess on a year-to-year basis, because that's what we agreed on. And Dr. Ramoncha, we have appealed to him to say, let's have one source, so that whatever number we get, it's one number. Currently, you find that the Department of Mineral Resources has their number. We have our number. And the union organizations, in terms of NUM, they have their number.
But how does
and
that
then
happen?
We end up, for us, we wonder about that, because we say to our members, submit the report to DMR, and then we give us a copy. We add the numbers. And we're quoting 5 years ago. The numbers were submitted in March. We are in October, Xolani. I have the numbers now. And now when I share these numbers, Dr. Ramoncha is going to disagree with me. And
tell me about transformation. How far have you gone? And let's, for instance, talk about human resources development.
But Dr. No, Xolani, no. The agreement I would like to get from Ramoncha with the country listening is we are going to have one source of reference, because I quote my numbers, he disputes them, they dispute them, and then you end up actually having, unfortunately, the dialogue of the deaf. And I don't want to have
and I've heard you say, and I've heard you say in public that the stats that the department has been using are outdated.
Yes. And I have been saying to the department, let's get one organization. Look at a rating agency and we say, here is the rating agency which we are going to agree on. We submit the report and we engage with them, and they come up, or rather reports, and they come up and they say, this is how the mining industry
But
has
is that deliberate or not? Yeah, Mr. Fav, you want to come in?
No, the COSATU Congress, this may be the way out of it, indeed, Dr. Ramanjo. The COSATU Congress is calling for a special commission of inquiry, a high-profile one, at the same rate as we've seen the Leon Commission, as well as the Vihan Commission of 1979, to look at the conditions under which workers are working in the mining industry in general. Surely when you do that, you cannot look at those conditions out of context. The context is that the mining industry have made 3 commitments already. There is a mining charter, there is a DTI codes, and there is a mining declaration of July 2010. We must look at each and every commitment that have been made through a commission of inquiry in order to determine the truth in relation to that, because indeed the figures you're going to be spending out are radically different from our figures.
All right, but you wanted and I'm going to go to the headlines in a second, but you wanted an answer from Dr. Ramoncha. Dr. Ramoncha, give me an answer, because I don't understand how the figures can be different, given the fact that the charter itself makes provision for reporting.
Look, I think it will be pointless for us to be arguing about figures. What is important for us and what the people of South Africa wants to see, they want to see a transformed mining industry.
But you see, the reason why we will argue about that is because the charter says, yes, they have gone a certain extent, they've gone a certain mile, but you are saying, giving different figures that they have not. So it's important that we must settle this issue of figures once and for all.
Please.
The commission is the only way to go. The chamber must support the commission.
Support the commission.
Thank you very much.
That's interesting. Okay.
We welcome it then.
Oh, the commission. All right, we'll talk about the commission. No, I think this is very important. Let me take the news headlines. I'll come back and I'll talk about the commission in a minute. Vabakshini Chet is standing by with the news headlines. Right. The lines are open, by the way, on 0891 104 208. 0891 104 208. We're talking about the mining charter. It's exactly 10 years now since the charter was signed by, among others, the Department of Minerals and Energy back then, now DMR, together with the mining industry stakeholders, those including the Chamber of Mines, South African Mining Development Association, the unions, particularly COSATU unions, National Union of Mine Workers, among the signatories there. What are your thoughts then? What have you got to say about these matters? Also, I'll be taking your emails at gwalax@sabc.co.za, gwalax@sabc.co.za. I just get a sense, of course, just before the news headlines, Mr. Spear, we agree that a commission should be instituted here.
Yes, before I just cover that issue, the South African Mining Development Association, SAMDA, is not invited here in person or on the phone. For us, we just want to state that we did not oppose their invitation. Should you have felt necessary to invite them, you invite them. I wouldn't want that SAMDA becomes an AMCU of this debate.
No, certainly not.
Honestly,
not. There were logistics. Yes. Our logistics. If anything, if they have anybody
I have
to
their
complain
report,
to,
I have their statistics. So I'll represent
if they have,
them.
sure. If they have anybody to complain about, they must complain about me, and that it's my mistake.
That's true. I just want to be on record. And let's deal with the commission of inquiry.
Yes, I want to deal with the commission before and get everybody to commit on this commission.
Tell me the commission of inquiry. We had a meeting on the 21st of September with the NUM at NUM's request, and we discussed a number of issues. One of them was this commission of inquiry. And our response, which is formal and with them, is to say we support the commission of inquiry on condition that we are going to be, one is going to be independently run, is going to be objectively run, and we are going to be involved in finalizing the terms of reference. With that, for us, we say,
broadly speaking, what in your view should this commission do?
It should do all the things that COSATU is saying it should. Over and above that, it needs to look at the mining charter and say, how far have we gone? And therefore, if the commission is going to subpoena people to give the report and for them to say, this is what we say under oath, and have an authority to verify, and therefore if it wants to say, you know what, we are not quite experts in that area, we're going to get experts to dig into that and come up with an objective view, we submit ourselves to that.
Mr. Vavi?
That's progress. We're going somewhere, and I'm happy that the DMR also have already said that they are in full support of a commission of that kind. And we're going to be lobbying the leadership of government and the ANC to also support it. And then it's going to be raised against time, because we need that commission to work parallel to the current commission of inquiry that is looking at the violence tragedy in Marikana. So if the two reports can be issued at the same time around January, it will go a long way in ensuring that whatever the mining companies have not done, they are put under pressure to ensure that they deliver on the commitments they've made by 2014.
In reciprocal as well, whatever the mining companies have done, that they be given credit for.
Sure, I suppose that's what the commission will find. Dr. Ramoncha, let me get your views then on this. Are we all in agreement about the commission?
Well, I think the details thereof we'll have to discuss. because basically it is a view which came at this discussion. But I think the details thereof, we'll have to sit down with COSATU and see how we come with something which is agreeable by both parties or by the whole tripartite structure.
All right. Fantastic. Let me take some calls here. In fact, a lot of people have called already. Let me start with Brian here in Johannesburg. Hello, Brian.
Hi. Good morning, Colony, and to your listeners.
Hi. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. My contribution is simply to say I think this is reflective of the imbalance in society. So where the powerful always get more leeway. If there's legislation and regulation that asks for mines and others to comply, and where they don't, the law should simply take its course. I mean, there can be no logic in saying, let's wait till the end of the period of 2014 and then see the extent to which they have or don't comply, and only then do we make them liable. In the meantime, people are suffering, people's rights are denied, and because the mines are so powerful in the country, they literally get away with murder.
But is there no, thinking, are you not supportive of the thinking that says, well, let's put together a commission, let's get the facts first, and then punish those that have not complied?
And why do we need another commission? Yes, now at this point, let's put together a commission. But in the meantime, if someone breaks the law, the law must take its course. Right. I mean, the whole question about, let's say, for instance, the media as well. The media does a lot of investigative journalism when government officials. Why don't the media go in and do a number of assessments themselves and report to the nation? Let's make it public the extent to which the powerful are breaking the laws in this country.
All right. Brian in Johannesburg, I thank you for your call. Let's go to Sipho. Sipho is with DTI. Good morning, Sipho.
Hello.
Hi, welcome, Sipho.
Yes, good morning, Kolani, and good morning to your panelists.
Hi, you most welcome.
Kolani, I just want to say, speaking for myself, I will support the Commission of Inquiry. If you look at the BE Act right now, we are amending it, and one of the things that we are proposing there is a BE Commission to look at these issues where people claim that there's been empowerment, but there is nothing at all happening. But just to add on that, I just want to say, you see, it's a big problem in our country, man, because right now the people really that are supposed to be empowering the black people are not in the panelists there. You know, it's all the black people who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of these things. They are the ones who are debating, and at that time they're apologetic, to the slow empowerment of the people in this industry. So, and I guess, Kolane, someone commented that 2010 there was a review, mm-hmm. and the empowerment is very slow. Instead of now government, taking away those licenses, I think it will be very, very, very difficult, because I guess even the unions will want to oppose that, because people lose their jobs when that happens. So I think we are we are in a very difficult situation here, whereby people, they will wish government to take away the licenses and all these things, but then we will find some stakeholders.
Okay, Sipho.
They're opposing it.
All right, Sipho, thank you very much. Let me just get quick responses to the two calls, because clearly there's an issue of punish those that are not complying and do so now, Mr. Vavi.
That's the very point that I was making right from the beginning, that we should not wait for 2014 when it is very clear that some companies are falling way behind the targets that have been set. For example, Brian is making the point, and Sipho is just reinforcing it. There are 59,000 people that are currently residing in hostels. The commitment says by 20, and I'm now talking about the figures we know. That's the figures from 7 companies that have cooperated with the research that SAMDA have commissioned, and disclose how many of their workers are still residing in hostels. 59,000 workers are still residing in the single-sex hostels. And the relationship between that and the HIV and AIDS, and just the scale of dehumanizing human beings and treating them as if 1994 didn't happen at all. Now, you can't wait until 2014, when it is very clear that there is no action.
But Mr. Vavi, COSATU is going to be accused of inconsistency here. If you say let's wait for the commission, let's
No,
wait
we're
for the
not saying
commission.
so. We're taking up struggles today. We're not going to wait for commission in January and not fight these issues. We're taking up the struggles
But
of
we
workers.
cannot punish people until we are certain about the information
But
that's
we
out
know workers stay in those hostels. They don't need a commission to tell them. We need a commission to just expose this whole setup of the lack of transformation in the mining industry to the country
I think
and
let's
to
sort this thing
and
out.
to the world as a whole.
there. Okay.
I think let's sort this thing out. I think, Vavi, I respect you very deeply. And when you commit to an agreement, you need to honor the agreement. The mining charter is an agreement which says there are people who are being in single-sex hostels, and we are saying they are going to be reduced in terms of the numbers. I'm not going to accept 59 because I didn't quote you numbers because exactly it's SAMDA. Has it verified with anybody? I'm not so sure. But we are saying that number is going to be reduced to 0 by 2014. The rate, is it fast enough? It is what we need to be assessing. I said to Dr. Ramuncha, on an annual basis, let's have an independent verification. He didn't come with the crystal yes. And we even agree now through the commission. Because for us, what is the interest in the commission? Our interest in the commission, number one, is really getting where we are with the mining charter in a manner that is independently verifiable. That's why we're supporting the commission, because we are looking at it and saying we argue against each other on the numbers which are not verified. And therefore somebody say the government, because it's government, it's authority. And I'm saying, well, you are the authority. However, at some stage, if you can't count, may we get somebody who can.
Dr. Ramuncha?
I think we can count. I think Mr. Sibia is totally wrong there. But the bottom line is we are willing to work with people to address this situation. And as I said earlier, the issue here, we can sit and argue and argue and argue. But the people of South Africa want to see a transformed industry, and we have to do it.
And the two callers that have already called so far, Dr. Ramuncha, are saying why not punish those that have fallen foul, that have not implemented accordingly? How do you respond?
We will punish them. And in the past, people who did not adhere to this thing, we call them, we actually warn them. We warn them, and we, as I said to you, come 2014, we will revoke those licenses. It's not negotiable. You have to give people chance. There's administrative justice, which you have to also consider here. But we all have agreed on this charter. That is, by 2014, things like single-sex hostels must be eradicated. They have to happen in the mining industry. And I think Mr. Sibia has to play his role there as the CEO of the Chamber of Mines and go and inform his constituency that come 2014, we have to ensure that those targets are met. There won't be any compromises when it comes to that issue.
All right.
The issue
Dr. Ramuncha, may we clarify though, in terms of 2014, how shall we verify information in a manner that is independent, it's professional, is undebatable?
Look
Dr.
here, we've
Ramuncha,
got
sir.
no problem. We have got no problem with that. We can get anybody who can come and look at the data, but as government, we will have to do our job. Okay, and that
with respect,
information
Dr. Ramuncha,
will-
though, don't give us Moloto, whom you know that you got some people who is going to sing your song rather than be objective. Because if in 2014,
Who's Moloto?
2015,
Who's Moloto?
there was a Moloto commission which came up with the figures where we don't know where they got them from. We have been arguing this thing for at least 2.5 years.
But there's also an accusation to the mining industry that the mining industry has not cooperated where people, for instance, the association has been
Look at
looking for
this.
some of the information.
Which one?
SAMDA, for
SAMDA.
example.
Oh no!
SAMDA
Please
asked
give me
people-
a break. Nobody at SAMDA has contacted me for
No,
any
no.
information
And how many
in the
Eight.
past 2
Hold on.
years.
According to SAMDA, about
Let
what,
me give you the
8?
figures. The
No,
SAMDA
cooperation. Let's deal
the
with cooperation,
SAMDA
guys.
Research ask companies directly. Harmony, how many workers do you have? They say 37,521. Of those, how many of them are still staying in the single-sex hostels? The answer, 389, which represent a 65% of the workforce in the single-sex hostel. They go to the next one.
No, let's deal with this number. Because in terms of the single-sex hostel, it is the contribution which we have said is to say it can be a single-sex hostel so long as there is one resident per room. That is a focus.
So are you saying that we can't even agree on what a single-sex hostel is?
We know it. I stayed there myself. I know what it means.
I mean, surely we should
agree
on that.
We should.
The definition of what a hostel is and what a hostel is not.
Yes, you should. But in terms of the statistics is quoting, nobody has said let's cooperate with the chamber. Nobody.
Hence then, I think it is, instead of us then arguing about this, it is fair to go back and say, let's get a commission.
I agree.
Let's get a commission.
The chamber agrees.
A neutral commission that will do this kind of work and involve everybody across the board and get this started. Let's get some calls here. John in Port Elizabeth, hello.
Clanny.
Hi.
Hi, Clanny. I just think the point I was going to make, I'm going to suspend, because in respect to this issue of statistics and numbers, another way of getting a depth understanding, excuse the pun, in the mining industry is for a longitudinal case study of looking at a particular instance. And I'm busy writing a book, and I'm hopefully all three gentlemen will buy it, talking about my experience as a social worker working with a rural community on the Wild Coast who basically didn't want mining to take place. But it raises the whole issue about BEE. And I'm very much on Moletsi Mbeki's perspective on this thing, where I see BEE, and certainly from the experience I've had on the Kolobeni Mineral Sands project, has been a process whereby the exploitative white capital has actually co-opted certain black faces to front for it, and to continue the fundamentally exploitative nature of mining as it's experienced in this country for over a century and more. And I think for me, the Wild Coast story is an interesting one, because everybody thought, it's about environment and destroying the environment. The fact is that my book is largely to do with the extraordinary social injustices that actually have arisen with collaboration from, and I have to say it, senior officials from the Department of Resources.
Okay, John, and I think the point... Sure, I think the point here, John...
my concern is that can we at least get perspective from the ground?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, because then if we have a platform such as the Commission, then we'll have civil society coming through and making representations. Isn't that the issue then, Mr.
Exactly, and I can't wait for an opportunity to finally get off my chest the frustration. And I speak as a white South African, and I got involved because I'm conscious that I've benefited hugely from mining from my family. And from my relative privilege, I wanted to make sure that in the spirit of reconciliation, reconstruction, and development, I got involved with the rural community. And it's very disillusioning when you find that the very same process is still continuing after more than a century.
All right, John in Port Elizabeth, thank you. Let's go to Jabu in Mpumalanga. Hello, Jabu. Jabu? All right, have we lost that call? Hassan is here in Johannesburg. Hello, Hassan.
Hi. I think the earlier speaker took some of my point. I think that part of the problem has been this tripartite arrangement. We don't have organized communities, poor communities who've been protesting, service delivery protests, and also if you look at the benchmark study that I have some association with, for about 4 or 5 years we've been doing some work in Marikana and other communities, not just now when everyone has discovered where Marikana is. Now those communities have had their independent protests, outside workers, but there's a link between organized workers and communities where the living out allowance is a direct example of that, where people want more money, they live in a shack. So when you don't factor this in and you simply talk again with DMR, the organized labor and very organized capital, who have means of deflecting these powerful things. They bring their lawyers. So really we have to think how this will be bringing out the truth. But as the last speaker pointed out, looking for alternatives. We're not mining obsessed in the communities. So really we have to find a way of factoring, not as giving evidence. Again, it's a lower end. Organized communities, groundworks, other NGOs that have been doing sterling work, not Johnny Come Lately, have to be included in this. And they found the DMR not to be a good regulator. In fact, there's one of the reports they write about, they have to monitor the community monitors that benchmarks have and others have to monitor the regulators. I mean, really. So we have to look at how effective these things are, environmental problems that they've given rise to, and alternatives to mining.
Sure. Hassan in Johannesburg, thank you. Gerald in Durban, hello.
Morning.
Hi.
Morning to your guest.
Yeah.
Okay, just putting this, just you can see why COSATU elected to have an uncontested election. I'm amazed that Mr. Harvey only wants to do something today. He's been personally in alliance with government for over 18 years. He could have instituted a minimum wage 18 years ago. It's amazing that, what he promised with the event of the new government was a tsunami of change that would uplift the poor and create a better life for all. But why has it taken Marikana to produce his lunar moment to establish that now the 12,500 was an equitable wage?
Okay, Gerald?
And many of these mine owners are part of his friends from COSATU. Why couldn't he just engage them?
All right, Gerald in Durban, let's get Mr. Vavi to respond then.
Well, Gerald, I'm a former mine worker. I stayed in the hostels. I know the real meaning of being dehumanized and all of your dignity taken away. It doesn't have to be that I'm in the Tripartite Alliance to know or not to know that. The fact of the matter is that with my individual contribution as a mine worker, a member of the NUM, we have waged relentless campaigns to try and improve both the wages and the conditions of employment. And to a big extent, we have succeeded as the NUM to try and improve the situation from West. I can quote you the health and safety figures, the accidents, the deaths in the mining in terms of what was happening historically and where things are now, to show that there is some progress, albeit very, very slow. So playing politics against me about as if we've just discovered now and that we don't know all of these things whilst we have been struggling against them, whilst you probably have been sitting on some chair and criticizing, is absolutely unfair.
Right, I need to wrap up then, gentlemen. Perhaps Mr. Spear, we need to get to the end of the program. But I just need to understand, though, how soon will this should this commission get underway, given the urgency of the matter? I mean, wherever you look, all over the world, people are reporting about our industry, the mining industry in this country, and saying that there's a lot of instability. How soon should this thing get underway?
I should be respectful of COSATU and the NUM because they initiated it, and we say we are supportive of it. We will make contributions to it to the extent that nominal financial contributions so that it happens well. We want to do that. For us, we just want to appeal that it should be objective, independently run, and in terms of reference, we should be involved in it. And I think if it were to conclude its work in January, it would be wonderful. As I wrap up, though, Xolani, I would really be remiss in not saying, as we sit here, there are strikes which are happening in platinum, in gold, in coal are protected, but in those others, gold and platinum are not protected. It's very unfortunate. There are some companies which are going to be initiating disciplinary inquiries with the possibility of terminating the services of people for unprotected strikes. Mine is to challenge COSATU and NUM, AMCO, Solidarity and UWASA to say those who are operating in the mining industry, let's save the industry, let's save the jobs, let's find all that we can do, and it is sustainable to stop the illegal and unprotected strikes in the gold and
Mr. Vavi's tone over the weekend wasn't the one that says they must stop the strikes, as I heard it. It was the one that says COSATU is going to support these strikes.
Absolutely.
And procedural strikes.
Let me just, in conclusion, say that now that everybody seems to agree on the commission, we will go straight to the ANC leadership and the government and to say, set it up as soon as possible. And hopefully, if we have an agreement there, it will be running in no time from now. Secondly, the Chamber of Mines have agreed with the NUM that we must reopen the negotiations in relation to wages and conditions of employment. We need a speed.
We are going to start the negotiations which were going to be happening in 2013. We are going to consider starting those earlier than we otherwise.
What does it mean, consider? Are they starting or not?
The point we're making is that those negotiations have to start before the end of this week.
Mr. Spear?
Before the end of this week?
Absolutely.
No, that one I can't commit because the coal, gold people who negotiate are the ones who are going to decide.
Okay, let me get the last word as well from Dr. Ramuncha. Dr. Ramuncha? All right, his line has dropped, but generally we all know that he obviously, as the department, also agree to the commission. You were just saying just a final one?
No, in relation to the agency of the matter, there are unprotected strikes that have been initiated by workers on their own. Almost 120,000 workers are involved in those what you call illegal strikes. The unprotected strikes, workers are feeling the shoe. What we cannot do as COSATU and the NUM is to be the manjingilane of the mining industry and trying to get workers back instead of addressing the issues that they are raising. So the commitment we have made is that we will champion their cause, and that's why we're asking the Chamber of Mines to speed up the process of consultations internally so that we can have a negotiated settlement to resolve the issue.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. That's Mr. Spear. You agree that you'll go back to your members. You will find out how soon the negotiations can be open.
We shall do so.
All right. I thank you both for coming through and talking to us this morning. Important discussion indeed. Bheki Sibiya is the Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Mines, and Zwelinzima Vavi is the General Secretary of COSATU. Also joining us from the Americana studio, our makeshift studio over there, is General for the Department of Mineral Resources. Thank you all for coming through. 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 Resources.